Redistricting season is in full swing, and every state in the union is using the 2020 census data to redraw the congressional districts. The districts are being drawn today will determine the shape of the US Congress for the next 10 years. Too often the redistricting process is deliberately used by the politicians to draw district lines in favor or disadvantage one political party over another. This evening's speaker, Tony, you told me how to say this, Crocamo?
That's fine, that's fine.
I'm sorry, Tony, I probably butchered that for you.
No. I've heard much worse.
Anyways, Tony represents Fair Districts PA, the FDPA, which is a nonpartisan coalition of citizens and organizations seeking to reform Pennsylvania's redistricting rules and make the process of drawing districts impartial, transparent, and accountable. He is a rostered teaching artist with the PA Council of the Arts, and Tony is a resident of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. Following a 30-year career providing marketing services for international engineering and design firms, Tony now presents FDPA redistricting educational presentations throughout Pennsylvania and trains FDPA members on how to lobby state legislators. So in today's presentation, Gerrymandering, the real voter fraud, Tony will provide an overview of gerrymandering tactics and strategies and encourage us to explore how our state conducts the redistricting process. The more the public investigates redistricting, the harder it is for politicians to draw the lines for their partisan advantage. And this is a super important topic and very pertinent to the things that we're fighting for. So all of this, please welcome Tony Crocamo.
Very good. Thank you very much, Kara. And I'll get the presentation up here. So gerrymandering, the real voter fraud. And it is, and Kara is right, no matter what issue you are bringing to your legislators, gerrymandering profoundly affects it because it determines whether or not your legislator needs to be responsive to you or only to his or her party leadership. Because gerrymandering creates safe districts, a district where you win the primary, you're getting elected. So what that does, what gerrymandering does, when you're drawing district lines, when the politicians are selecting the voters, it's no longer we the people, it's we the party. The party interests are represented, not the interests of the public. And as I get started on this, I'll be stressing what happens in Pennsylvania. That's where I'm based. That's what I know most about. That's where Fair Districts PA is working. So I'll be talking a lot about Pennsylvania. And in the course of that, it may sound like I'm beating up on Republicans. Trust me, we are nonpartisan, not bipartisan, we are nonpartisan. And what the Republicans have done to Democrats in Pennsylvania, Democrats have gleefully done to Republicans in Maryland, Illinois, and California until they change the way they do it, and other states. So both parties gerrymander. Neither party is an altruistic organization. They can't help themselves. They will take whatever advantage they can take. And when the legislators are drawing the maps, they gerrymander, regardless of party. So what are we going to talk about tonight? I'm going to just quickly define reapportionment, redistricting, and gerrymandering in case you're not that familiar with the terms. I'm going to talk about your organizations, the states of your organization, the 7 states, the redistricting processes for each of those, and I'm going to give you the resources to look into that deeper. And I'm going to talk about how to evaluate maps that you may be examining, that are the new maps that are drawn for your districts. And then we'll have a question and answer period. And if you ask easy questions, I'll give you a very good answer. The difficult ones might take more time. And if there's something I can't answer, I know very smart people who probably can, and I'll get the information to Kara and she will distribute it to you after the meeting. So reapportionment. Why do we have redistricting at all? Well, it's right at the founding of our nation. Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution requires the reapportionment of congressional seats among the states every 10 years based on the U.S. Census. It's why we have the census. And initially, it was based on population, but that was capped around 1913, 1914 or so. They capped it at 435. And the reason they capped it at 435 around then, it's actually my grandparents' fault. At the time, there was a large influx of Italians from Italy into America. And they were settling mostly in urban areas. And that's another thread that goes right back to the founding of our country, that tension between urban and rural. It's why we have a bicameral Congress. You have the larger states have more members of Congress because of population. They have more representation there. But in the Senate, everybody gets 2. Delaware and New York, they get the same number despite population. So that rural-urban conflict has always been there. And again, around 1913, 1914, there was an influx of Italians into the United States. And of course, at the time, it was said that these immigrants were not all that desirable. They were said to be disease-ridden. They wouldn't assimilate. They were said to be just criminals. Does this sound familiar at all? It is the same complaints about immigrants, waves of immigrants that have come into our country over and over and over again. The Italians, the Irish, the Polish, the same complaints always. They won't assimilate. They're disease-ridden, and they're not really Americans. So what they did in that time, they said, okay, we're not going to base it on population anymore because the rural areas were afraid that the urban areas were going to have more representation in Congress. So they capped it at 435. So every 10 years, you take the census and you divide up the population, you divide up the number of seats in Congress by 435. And Pennsylvania, in 1990, Pennsylvania had 21 seats. And oh, by the way, that also determines the number of electoral votes your state gets. The number of congressional seats is the number of electoral votes. So Pennsylvania had 21 congressional seats back in 1990, and we've been losing steadily every 10 years based on population. Oddly enough, in 2010 and 2020, Pennsylvania did have small increases in population, but other areas of the country grew at a faster rate, and so the seats went there. So we're down to 17 congressional districts. We currently have 18. When those districts are redrawn, and they're in the process of redrawing them now, it's going to be 17. So that's reapportionment. Federal government, Congress. Your congressman, congresswoman is done every 10 years. It's redistricting. Now, although the federal constitution said every state has to do this every 10 years, they left it up to the states how to do it. So that's why we have so many different ways of doing it. Okay, redistricting is simply redrawing the boundaries for your state house and state senate districts, your state legislature, and your congressional districts, federal government, Washington, D.C., Congress. And redistricting that's going on now is going to determine the voting districts for the May 2022 primary. Our election in November is going to be based on our existing districts, state house, state senate, congressional districts. Those aren't going to change. But until the maps are drawn for the next set of districts, none of us knows what district, what congressional district we're going to be in, what state district, what house district we're going to be in. And those are being drawn now. Some states have completed them, others haven't. Those voting districts are going to apply to the May 2020 primary and the November 2022 general election and the next 10 years. And think about news reports on redistricting that you may have heard recently, and how often have you heard it said the Republicans have an advantage in redistricting because the Republicans control more state legislatures than any other than the Democrats do, and therefore they will win the redistricting battles and So the news blandly reports that the Republicans are expected to draw districts in their favor to be able to hold Congress for the next 10 years. Keep an ear out for that as you listen to news reports about the redistricting process nationally. It is just an accepted way that things are done. And we as a nation, we citizens have not raised enough hell about this issue. And we should. So gerrymandering, what is gerrymandering? Well, gerrymandering is simply drawing boundaries to benefit a party or a candidate. And it comes from good old Elbridge Gerry. His last name was Gerry, not Jerry. Elbridge Gerry, and in 1812, he approved a set of maps, redistrict maps, for Massachusetts, as governor of Massachusetts. And a Boston newspaper thought one of the districts looked like a salamander. They drew a political cartoon like that. And that's where gerrymander comes from. It's a mashup of Elbridge's last name, Gerry, and salamander. Now, Elbridge Gerry is an interesting character. He is one of the founding fathers, not a major light by any means. However, he did sign the Declaration of Independence. He did attend the Constitutional Convention. He did not approve of the Constitution because he wanted the Bill of Rights in it. So this is sort of like a life lesson for us all. You can do a lot of good things. And he's also the 5th vice president of the United States, and I think the first vice president to die in office. Not that that's an accomplishment, it's just an historical fact. But that's a life lesson for us all. You can do a lot of good things in your life. You can sign the Declaration of Independence. You can attend the Constitutional Convention. You can insist on a Bill of Rights, and you can become vice president of the United States. However, you do one thing like gerrymandering, and your legacy is just tainted forever. So be careful what you do out there. This is a very simplistic, although accurate, explanation of gerrymandering. You have 3 boxes here, and in each of the boxes, there are exactly the same number of gray blocks and blue blocks, and they're in the same place. And they're used to create they're used to create multiple voting districts, okay? So 3 districts each time. So in the first one on the left there, over here, you have the lines drawn that way, and you get blue winning 3 of the districts, although the district's possibly competitive. You draw them this way, you draw the lines this way. You still have 3 districts. There's 1 district here, there's 1 here, a lot of blue in there, and there's 1 here. And the same voting group, you get 2 gray districts and 1 blue district, even though 60% of the voters in those 3 districts are blue. They only get 1/3 of the representation. And in this third way, the lines drawn here, 3 districts again, 1 gray. There's no way a blue candidate is going to win in this district. There's no way a gray candidate is going to win in this district, or a gray candidate in this district. So these are 3 very safe districts for, 2 of them for blue, 1 for gray. And you get 3 very safe seats, 2 blue, 1 gray. Now, 3 different outcomes, same number of voters, same voting affiliations. The only thing that changes, 2 things change: where the lines are drawn and the results of the election. That's all that changes there. So that is a basic, simplistic explanation of gerrymandering. Gerrymandering goals are to grab a partisan advantage, protect incumbents, certainly that third one. You're in this job until you retire, or you irritate the base somehow, and they primary you. No matter what party you're in there for life. Protects incumbents, and also to punish incumbents or block out competitors. There have been people who live in a district, and then the district is redrawn, And they're going to mount, the politicians are concerned that this person could run has a competitive chance, and so they find themselves out of the district. In fact, it actually happened to Barack Obama when he was running for the state Senate in Illinois. He was drawn out of a district so that he wouldn't compete against a long entrenched state senator, I believe. This is the evolution of redistricting. Now, these are images of the same district, same area actually, that have redrawn from 1952 to 2013. And you can see that this is in eastern Pennsylvania. And what I'm showing you this because I want to point out how things started to change right around 1992 and 2002, and then they got crazy by 2013. And what's happening there, when they used to do redistricting, it used to be hand-drawn maps. They had to draw the maps by hand. But right around 1992, between 82 and 92, computers started being involved. And certainly by 2002, mapping software was involved. And by 2013, the mapping software and data mining became involved. And what that means is that they are able to precisely draw district lines to exclude and include a house. There are districts in State College, Pennsylvania, where they have, obviously Penn State is there, and they have dormitories, and two dormitories next to each other. One will be in one district and the other in another district, because students tend to vote, I guess, Democratic, and they didn't want that many Democrats in that district, so they wanted to split them up. So the data mining that's evident in here, you can just see it gets crazy where they're drawing the line. This was one of the most infamous districts, gerrymandered districts in the country. It's known as Goofy Kicking Donald, and I can see Goofy over here. Clearly, that's Goofy, and that's his ears and everything, and that's his toe, and I guess that's Donald's tail feathers. I don't really see Donald much, but anyway, it's called Goofy Kicking Donald. And this, where his toe is, I'm told, is a empty parking lot, and his neck is like a highway median. So it's just, with data mining, what they can do is they have all this demographic information on us. They know how much money we make. They know our education. They know if we have any loans out. They know they certainly know our voting records. Those of you who are active in politics know about street lists, and they know how many times you voted and what registration you have, and whether you vote in primaries and that sort of thing. And they also know magazine subscriptions and newspaper subscriptions. So if you subscribe to the New Yorker and the New York Times, they're making certain judgments about you. If you subscribe to Soldier of Fortune magazine, they're making other assumptions about you. And all this information gets put into the computer software for determining where to draw lines. And this is not polling data. This is data mining from our activity on the internet and everything. And people say, well, how do they know how much money I make? And they know because, well, if you've never had a credit card or a loan or a mortgage, maybe they don't. But if you've paid taxes, they do. They know because you have three major credit bureaus in the United States. And this is an interesting topic because I don't know who gave them permission to get all this information on us, but they have it. And these three major credit bureaus, you remember when Equifax a couple of years ago was hacked and everybody was just wringing their hands because all that information got out there, social security numbers and credit card numbers and all that stuff. And Equifax was pretty upset and everything. However, I wasn't all that upset about that because you know what Equifax and the other two credit bureaus do with that information? They sell it. And who do they sell it to? They sell it to marketing companies, and they also sell it to PACs, and political organizations, political parties that use it for drawing district maps. So that information on it is out there sold anyway. So they get all that information, they draw the lines precisely, and they can be with certain, if you have two cars in the driveway and one has a Biden sticker on it and the other one has a Trump sticker on it, they can draw the line between the two cars. They can get that precise. And this graphic illustrates that point. This is the redistricting process for Colorado, and it's first because I did this alphabetically. But even if I hadn't done it alphabetically, I think Colorado has one of the best processes. It's what Pennsylvania was trying to get done, and fair districts couldn't do it legislatively. They have an independent citizens commission, and it's as of 2020. It's both the 12 members. There's two independent citizens commission, different ones for each one. Each has 12 members consisting of 4 registered, the state's largest political party, 4 the second largest political party, and 4 with no political party. And then approving the map requires a supermajority of 8 commission members, including 2 of those unaffiliated members. So the unaffiliated definitely get a say. So you couldn't have the Republicans and the Democrats getting together, getting a majority and passing a gerrymandered map. So that's a pretty good system in Colorado. New Hampshire, it's drawn by the legislature for congressional districts. State legislative districts are drawn by the legislature. And I have a red flag here because the governor's party is Republican and the legislative majority is Republican. There's no checks and balance on this. The only alternative, it would be through the courts. So that is a very bad system. This is for Ohio. They have a hybrid commission in Ohio. For congressional districts, the legislature attempts to pass redistricting plans with bipartisan support. If they can't, the task goes to a 7-member commission composed by the governor, state auditor, secretary of state, and one person appointed by each state legislative leader. So still heavily political process there. The state legislative districts are by a political commission. The same 7-member commission that serves as a backup for drawing congressional districts has the primary responsibility for drawing the state legislative districts. And again, the governor's party is Republican, legislative majority is Republican. If the Republicans hold sway in those commissions, and it's likely they would, then there's not much checks and balance. And you notice in all of these that I'm talking about today, where's the role of the people? We're not involved in any of these states. Oregon, congressional districts drawn by the legislature, state legislative districts drawn by the legislature, governor's party is Democratic, legislative majority is Democratic. Again, a red flag. Where's the checks and balance? Who's minding the store? This is the grade that I believe it was the Princeton gerrymandering project gave to Oregon, where the Democrats drew the congressional maps. And if you see over here, it says that the significant Democratic advantage and advantages incumbents. So that did not get a good grade. And then Pennsylvania. Congressional districts are drawn by the legislative majority party. And then the legislative districts, state house, state senate districts are drawn by the LRC, the Legislative Redistricting Commission. And that consists of the leadership in the House and the Senate, the majority party, or their assigns, and the minority party, leadership in the House and the Senate. So those 4 people get together, they pick a chair, the 5th person of the committee, they pick a chair. If they can't pick a chair, then the state Supreme Court picks a chair, And this year, the state Supreme Court in Pennsylvania is a majority Democratic, so they picked a Democratic-leaning chair. So the Democrats are going to control the process for drawing the state House and state Senate districts in Pennsylvania, while the Republicans are going to control the process for drawing the congressional districts. Governor's party is Democratic, legislative majority is Republican. So you have some checks and balance there. If the Republicans drawing the congressional districts, presumably Governor Wolf would not sign off on a congressional district plan that was egregiously gerrymandered to favor the Republicans. In Pennsylvania, the maps that were drawn in 2011 were determined to be unconstitutional in 2018 by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. Those maps that were determined to be unconstitutional, we had 18 seats at the time, 15 were held by Republicans, 3 by Democrats. And that is in a state that voted literally 50-50 for Republican and Democratic congressional candidates during the year, during the election. 50-50 split in the vote, however, a 15-3 majority for the Republicans. Clearly, and those are the maps that the Supreme Court determined were egregiously gerrymandered. They threw those maps out and they hired an academic map maker to redraw the maps. Those maps, the next congressional election, those maps resulted in a 9-9 split. 9 Democrats, 9 Republicans, wiping out that 15-3 majority that the Republicans had. And that would seem to more accurately reflect the choice of the voters in Pennsylvania, which again voted 50-50 for Republicans and Democrats running for Congress. However, fair districts, we're not crazy about that process either. We would rather have an open and transparent process that we could all see and all participate in, rather than have the courts redraw the maps. The public had no input into the maps as redrawn by the courts. So we're not crazy about that. Virginia, hybrid political commission draws the congressional districts. Hybrid political commission draws the legislative districts. Governor's party is Democratic, legislative majority is Democratic. And there's going to be a handout uploaded in the chat on redistricting processes for the NCRN states that has additional details on how that's done. So what are best practices for redistricting? Well, Fair Districts wants to have a process that is transparent and is public engagement. We want a user-friendly website where the public can have access to the redistricting maps and the data beforehand. We'd like to have multiple statewide public hearings before and after the maps are drawn. We really believe that maps cannot be drawn well by anyone unless there is local input. It's the local people that know the ins and outs of whether two communities belong to each other or whether they should be split or shouldn't be split, and school districts, that sort of thing, should be adhered to, try to stay the same. So local engagement is necessary. And none of the processes I've outlined for any of the states of your organization has public input. Transparency, public engagement, enable the public to submit a redistricting plan, which the committee must review. We'd like to see a written report of decisions, the rationale and the process used, an explanation of why they had to take certain actions. We think every state should have clear, measurable map criteria. Mandate compact and contiguous federal and state districts. Add enforceable limits on splitting counties. Ban dividing voting precincts. You divide a voting precinct, it's certainly in urban areas, and it just causes a lot of problems with long lines voting lines and stuff. People are not sure where to vote. And it's just a practice that should be banned. Racial and language minorities should be protected and not marginalized. District plans designed to protect incumbents and discriminate against political parties should be outlawed. This should not be allowed. It should be the voters picking the legislators rather than the legislators picking the voters. So when you look at maps, and I'm going to give you some resources where you can do that for the maps in your state, whatever state you're in. You want to ask yourself, is there anything odd about the district? Certainly in Goofy Kicking Donald there, that's an odd looking congressional district. Look at that. You know, I mean, imagine if, you know, where does the congressperson have his or her home office? And wherever the home office is, how do the people from Goofy's ears get over here to Donald? I mean, just think of the time it creates a lot of problems for representation. Are the districts compact and sprawling? You know, where are the county, municipal, and geographic boundaries? Are rivers, ridge lines, mountainous regions, are they points of separation, or do you cross them? And what about school districts? Are they split? And why? If you're the superintendent or you're the parent of a child in school, you don't want to have to talk to 2 legislators, 3 legislators in order to get something done for your school district. It really complicates governance, makes it very inefficient. Does your county have more districts than necessary? Each district has to have a specific number of people in it. I believe it's 760,000 for congressional districts. Well, if you live in a state that has 750,000 and you're split, why is that? It should be, you know, if you split more than twice, something is going on there. It might be necessary to balance out with a neighboring county or something to split the county, but not more than twice. So do the legislators represent the entire district? Are their offices accessible? Are they do the people in the community know the legislators? And are they even responsive? So you have to ask yourself, if you're evaluating that, are your issues addressed? Could the districts be drawn differently? What would work better for communities you care about? And I have these are Senate districts in Pennsylvania. And look at the way they're drawn here. This is a county line. And this district is 10th district, crosses the county line. And then you have this little thing up here. You know, you have to ask yourself, what is going on there? And look at this odd shape. You got the 14th comes down through here, just squeezes through this gap, and is over here, and then goes up into this county. You know, what is going on there? I'm not sure what's going on there, but I'm telling you, something is going on there. You can look at the maps and you can just start asking questions. Why is it that way? Now, sometimes you have precincts that are odd shaped already, and you'll see crazy things. Certainly that happens in Philadelphia. But ask the question, why are these shaped like this? What are these gaps and squiggly lines all about? All right, this is one of the resources, and it's going to be posted in chat. And it's Dave's redistricting app, and you can get the congressional, House, and Senate maps for each state. And you can also get statistical information and demographic data on the maps. And I'm going to see if I can just get this here. Okay, so this is Dave's redistricting map, and you put your email in there and you create a password, but you click on any state. There's Pennsylvania. You got West Virginia here, Virginia down here, New Hampshire's up here. There's Ohio. And then you got Oregon's out there. So you click on any state and it will give you the information. You'll be able to see the maps for that state. And get all the information. Again, that's up at the top of the screen there is the davesredistricting.org. And you can get there, but this link is going to be in the chat. In there. And again, that's the map that you can click on any state and you can get the information. So if you're a PA, Pennsylvania resident, what else can you do? Well, you can schedule a speaker from Fair Districts PA. You can join Fair Districts PA, sign our petition. Over 100,000 people have. You can do the social media thing and like our Facebook page and share our posts, that sort of thing. And you can speak out for fair maps. Pennsylvania is currently accepting comments on the maps, on what people want to see in their maps. And so in one of the handouts that's going to be circulated, there's going to be some information on that. For information on your state's redistricting process, visit the Princeton Gerrymandering Project. And this has a wealth of information and it's a lot of fun. Once again, you can click on any state. I'll just click on, see what's up in Ohio, and you can click on the 2021 draft Democratic congressional map, 2021 final state house map, final state senate map. You can get all that information and more through there. So that's, again, both these links and others are going to be in the materials that are going to be in a chat. And another good resource is the League of Women Voters. They've been fighting gerrymandering for decades and are a good resource on what's going on in your state. And never forget that citizenship is a contact sport. And whether you email, send a postcard, by the way, don't send a letter. Letters take a long time to get there because of anthrax threats, people putting things in envelopes, but a postcard will go right through. Or you can have a Zoom meeting like this one with your legislator and staff, or just a telephone calls. A lot of people are, worried, I guess, don't like to, a little worried about confrontation, whatever. And you just call up after 7 o'clock at night, nobody's there. And you leave a message. It's just, hello, my name is, I live in. That establishes the fact that you're a constituent. And I'm calling you today to ask that you support fair districts in our state, because the people should be picking the legislators shouldn't be picking the voters. And thank you. And so that is what, 30-second, 45-second phone call, short email, postcard. You do that at a Zoom meeting and let them know what you want. Whatever issue you're concerned about, let them know what you want. And some people will say, well, Tony, my legislator is on the other side of the fence. So far on the other side of the fence, there's no point talking to him or her. And I have two rules. I assume goodness despite the evidence to the contrary. And if you don't talk to them, they get to say, no one ever brings this issue to me. It's not important to my constituents. Let them know what you want. We're supposed to have a representative government. Let's push that. Let them, and for them to represent us, we have to let them know what you want. So tell them politely, respectfully, repeatedly. Tell them what you want. So that is the overview of fair districts. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, I think. There we go. And I can take questions if you'd like.
I had one question, Tony.
Surely.
That when we were looking at the maps and talking about the fact there was no public input on the redistricting process. Now, I know we ended with that, like we can contact the legislators and make that ask, but how do we make that, how do we become as the public part of the process?
Okay, well, it all depends what the process is in your state. In Pennsylvania, the Legislative Redistricting Commission, which is that 5-member commission that's redrawing the state house and state senate boundaries, is conducting hearings. And they have a governmental website that you can upload comments to. You can get more information if you're in Pennsylvania. You can get more information at Fair Districts PA. I believe one of the handouts I sent you is that worksheet that has links, and that's a worksheet to prepare comments on maps. It gives you a series of questions to ask and everything. But in that worksheet, there are links to where to leave comments for the Legislative Redistricting Commission and for the State House Government Committee that is taking comments on the congressional maps. Just to show you the attitude of the Republicans in Pennsylvania about the redistricting process, they have a website for comments on the congressional maps. It is not on a governmental website. It is on the Republican caucus website. They see this, and I don't see anything terribly nefarious about that in itself, other than it just shows how entrenched, how fervently they believe this is, in their judgment, rightly so, a political process. And we get to do what we want to do with that political process. So again, check out I think the Princeton Gerrymandering project would have information on the current process in your state. It certainly will, as will Dave's. But there you can check on how to comment on the maps that are in progress. And also the League of Women Voters would be an excellent resource on how to comment in your state. One of the difficulties I had in putting this together, I'm very conversant on the mess in Pennsylvania. I'm not nearly as conversant on the mess in New Hampshire or the other states in your organization. But I think I've given you enough information where you can just find out how screwed up it is with very little work on your part. You have the tools there. And I feel confident in saying, with the possible exception of Colorado, it's screwed up.
Go ahead, Nikki. I see you have a question.
Well, I'm from Ohio, and what got me into all of this, in 2015, I worked with the League of Women Voters in gathering the signatures. We had 72% of people signing the signature for redistricting. And so the people in the state of Ohio want that. But because it's controlled by the Republicans, they drag their feet. And it's like, yeah, you can do this, but they're not abiding by what our Ohio state constitution is saying they need to. They just drag their, what's going to happen? They've missed all their deadlines, and they're still behind in a deadline. So instead of it being a 10-year fair district, it's going to be the same old for 4 years. And as long as the Republicans are in control, it'll be it for another 4 years.
Okay, but I would also add, and when the Democrats get control, they will do the same thing. You are talking about, but I'm telling you, neither party is interested. So I mean, I don't want to denigrate anybody that's involved with any political party and everything. I think at the grassroots level, politics does a wonderful thing, educating people, knocking on doors, getting the vote out. That's wonderful. But I'm telling you, once, and certainly now in this environment, once you get up to the state level, they are not interested in free and fair elections. They are interested, both parties are interested in winning elections.
I'm not attached to either party, but
Yeah.
it's like, what, and that's my thing that I ask at every meeting is, where are the independents? You know, where can we get them to at least vote to where you can make a difference? It's just really, aren't there 15 states that sort of have fair districts where there are independent people or non-political people on the teams?
I know California has an independent commission. I know Colorado does.
Yeah.
I believe Iowa does.
Well, I somewhere I've got that in my paperwork of stuff, but it seemed like there were 15 states that, how did they get it?
Most of those states, I will wager, have some sort of ballot initiative. Pennsylvania does not. And we have over 72% of Pennsylvania. We had we had more than 50% of the Pennsylvania House, the state House of Representatives, there's 203 members. We had 102 members co-sponsor a bill for redistricting reform. We couldn't get a vote.
Yeah.
102 co-sponsors, Republicans and Democrats. In the Senate, we had, because the party leadership quashed it.
Yeah.
In the Senate, 50 senators, we had 25 co-sponsors, Republicans and Democrats. Half of the Senate couldn't get a vote because leadership quashed it. So it's they hold power, they wield it, they use it against their memberships. I feel sorry for some of these legislators. They work, you know, it's tough to get elected. You got to really, unless you're in a safe district or something, it's tough to buck the an incumbent, and certainly in a district where they're favored. And you got to get all those signatures, and you got to go knocking on the doors, and you put some money in, and you run. And if you get elected, so many of them are surprised about what they can't do, what they're not allowed to do.
Yeah.
And they are under the thumb of party leadership. Parties have done, George Washington was right. He was not a fan of political parties, but they started forming before his first term was up. So,
Yeah.
and it was bad then too. You had Thomas Jefferson hiring a hack to savage John Adams in the press. I mean, it was just.
Tony, I've got a question on that very point. The parties, sure, actually early on, there was concern about partisanship, that there would be interests that would take over the system. And if we look at the US Constitution, political parties aren't mentioned. They're not part of the government. They're not actually a constitutional part. Even the fact that two political parties, and what is a political party? Technically, they are private corporations. They're incorporated.
Mm-hmm.
We have two corporations running our elections. And it's true that it's really it's just about impossible to change the system. You got 50 states and 50 different methods for redistricting, but in every case they're still controlled by the party. Well, not in every case. There's, as you say, the independent commissions and so forth. But if we really wanted to make a change, we're not going to do it by voting in the right people, as you pointed out. They find out they get elected and they don't have any authority. They can put forward bills and not have them even brought to the floor.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me that there may be, of course, if we didn't have political appointment of judges, it would be a more straightforward process. But challenging the political parties' stranglehold on our elections seems to me that there might be an argument for denial of equal protection of the law, 14th Amendment kind of thing. You know, not to get too arcane about it, but I think there are arguments that could be made. And what I'm suggesting is we're not trying the alternative methods to get rid of this horrendous monopoly over, well, it's not democracy now.
Absolutely isn't.
Destruction of the democratic process by two private corporations. And it's unfortunate, but divide and conquer works. So people who are registered Democrats are going to say, well, I'm not going to sue my own party, and the Republicans say the same thing. But frankly, we have a fairly large independent affiliation of voters. And it seems to me that maybe there's a way to harness that, plus some independent-minded Republicans and Democrats who would say, it's not about my party, this is about our democracy.
Yeah.
I think that it has to be tackled, not 50 states one at a time, but in a broad way. We're not going to, and I'm mindful that changing the federal constitution is really difficult. So it's not, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting, okay, so you have to redistrict every 10 years based on the census, because that's what the Constitution says. We're not going to touch that. We're not going to fix it. Why not mount and I don't mean one lawsuit, but in every state and on the national level, in the federal courts and the state courts everywhere, and really give the independents something to do, because they can't vote in primaries in many states because that's locked up by the political corporations. So just something to think about. I think that we sometimes don't look at the tools that we might have.
Yeah, and sometimes what you have to do is exhaust one avenue before you go on the other avenue. And you know, a fair district certainly has been, you know, has come close. Yeah, I mentioned all the co-sponsors and everything on legislation that would have imposed criteria for redistricting that, you know, was measurable, and you can measure the maps against that. But you know, that failed. So now we're just our approach is to just get the issue out there and make sure people are commenting on the maps and look at the maps and have some understanding of what makes a good map and a bad map, and just to ask questions about it. And the more eyes we have on the topic, we think they will not be as egregious as they have been. That's kind of a sad thing, but that's what we're going for. Less bad.
Yeah. I wanted to say something about, well, first of all, I'm also from Ohio, and one is the way it's written. I think, I don't know the exact language, but that the district shouldn't be drawn, that it doesn't reflect the voting trends pretty much statewide. And in the past 10 years, there's been about 54% people have voted Republican and 46, you know, about Democrat. So you would think the districts would be set so that that would be about the numbers. Of course, it's been like 75% Republican in the last 10 years for state and federal. So, and these new districts they redrew, I think, are even worse that they've recently done. And even the governor, who's part of the commission, and I think the Secretary of State also, even though they voted for it, they the way they've drawn it, they raised some concerns. So I think it's going to go to a lawsuit. Now, the Republicans who've in the legislature who've defending it said, well, in the past 10 years, pretty much 54% to 80-some% have voted Republican. Of course, they're using that statistic to represent how it's gone with these already gerrymandered districts. Right. Yeah. So it's ludicrous to even use that because it's already a biased thing there. But so not only there's several lawsuits that are going to go to the House Supreme Court, and again, we don't always get reliefs in courts there, and they're also party driven too. So there's another problem right there. Yep. Ohio right now is 4 Republican, 3 Dems on the Ohio Supreme Court. So that's another issue of how that's going to play out there. And then the other thing is looking about going back to a ballot initiative, which is also a pretty expensive and onerous process, but to take it out of these people's hands. So that's kind of where it is. And one more thing I wanted to say is that there was a competition. I don't know if you had that too, that Common Cause, and I think
all the lines,
when voters of people who took that day's redistricting and drew, and then they had to defend their maps. So they had like the top 3, and then they gave presentations of how they did it. It was very interesting. And then I thought they did a great job. And then they took comments from certain people, and then they came back and she made some changes also. And I thought really did a great job. I know it's a challenging thing when you think about, you got to try to keep communities intact, but then what communities are you talking about? And then you want to make districts competitive, but you can't make them all competitive if it's majority one party or the other in the past year. So you realize it's not going to all work that way, but you can come up with some compromises there. So It was interesting, but then when you said that in Pennsylvania, they have to comment on citizens' maps, I don't think in Ohio they have to do that. And I think they should say, well, why would they reject the people who've submitted good maps, who are pretty good at this stuff here? So,
Well, they would reject them because it doesn't fit their political purposes.
Exactly.
And, I may have given the misimpression that I was talking about standards we would like to see imposed. There is no standard for people commenting on maps. I mean, they have hearings, but they have the last time around they had hearings in May and June, and then we didn't see the maps until Christmas week.
yeah.
And those are the maps that were thrown out as being unconstitutional a couple of years later by a
Right.
Democratic Supreme Court. The Republican Supreme Court at that time, with the original map, said, you know, these are pretty bad. Go back and do a less bad job. And they went back and did a less bad job. And the maps that were approved included Goofy kicking Donald. That was part of the improved map.
Yeah, yeah.
But when the Democrats took over the Supreme Court, got a majority in the Supreme Court, then it was reversed. So again, even legislative, even through the court system, you know, I was speaking to somebody, to Kara, I guess, believe earlier, that used to be all politics is local, and now it's all politics is national. And it really is a painful transition.
Mm, mm.
And two people mentioned the petition process. And here in Oregon, that's been hijacked too. So
Yeah, it's tough. Again, the states that have had success with independent redistricting commissions tend to be those states that do have a ballot initiative. But I showed the score that Oregon got with their new maps, and it was an F for protecting incumbents and a decided Democratic advantage in the state. So it's again, Democrats do it, Republicans do it. They can't help themselves. It's political power is political power. And it's up to citizens to figure out some way around this. And it's tough. It's tough. Okay, any other questions?
I just wanted to say that I have copied the documents into an email and copied everybody's email into
Great.
an email, which I will send out. It's NCRN handouts for tonight's webinar, and then the title. So
Great, great. Yeah, and enjoy those. Those are fun links, they're fun maps to do. You can draw your own maps, you can look at the statistics, you can see what's going on, and you can get information on and exactly where your state is in the process, which is be very helpful to you. And make some noise.
I told Tony that we're heady people, and if you give us the breadcrumbs, we'll read it and follow it. So I hope that you all take the time to do that. I'm sure you will. So thank you for joining us today too.
Oh yes, I enjoyed it. Thanks everybody for being on here.
Thank you.
And please share
Thank
this word within your states, and now we need to be vocal about this as well. These again are people's rights that are being usurped, and to be able to speak out against the gerrymandering in our own states and get the word out.
Okay.
I have one thought about following you on what you just said, Kara, and really what this is all about is that, you know, we have supposed to have some kind of citizen. How do they have a way to address imbalances within the general court? It doesn't make any difference as far as Republicans and Democrats are concerned. If I'm a Democrat and I have a Republican representative, or vice versa, that it's the duty of that that representative to to address that citizen's issues. It's not based on anything dealing with party politics. And what are the checks and balances of executive government? And why isn't the Attorney General have a position when the Constitution is in conflict of itself, the way that they're regulatory laws or whatever that let them do this gerrymandering? I mean, why don't we just do away with the electoral system completely and just go to a vote? Just a regular straight vote across the state, who cares? And if you want to be a Republican, fine. If you want to be a Democrat, independent, or whatever, but whoever gets elected, gets elected. I mean, I just think we're hot, like you were saying, we are supposed to be, someone's supposed to work for us to address the situation. I would think the Attorney General would be the person that would be his responsibility in the executive branch of government.
Yeah, yeah.
One would think.
Yeah. Just one other thing I was thinking is just too bad that, of course, not unexpected that the Supreme Court punted when this issue was brought before them about that a few years ago. So,
Well, the courts have, they punted on it a number of times. The courts have held that the founders wanted this to be a political process. But again, politics in 1779 is not like politics in 2021.
no.
So fine, it's so, and they've also said, the courts have said, we don't know how to quantify, how to measure gerrymandering. And they're looking for, well, supposedly looking for a standard. There are mathematical standards out there to determine compactness and contiguous is you're connected or you're not. That's an easy one. But then there's also wasted votes and things. There are a whole number of mathematical formula out there that have been proposed as ways to measure whether something's been gerrymandered. Until the courts seize upon a method, it's going to be tough for the courts to control it. Yeah.
All right, then we've run a little bit over the hour, but it's good information. It's really good information. And again, Tony, really, really appreciate you taking the time to share your knowledge with us and your expertise. And I'm hoping that we can all take this home and use it in our own states.
Right. If you guys would be interested in, I'm also involved in it's a Friends Committee on National Legislation, Quakers. They have a method of lobbying their legislators that is clearly non-confrontational. They're Quakers. But it's meant to build a relationship even with the SOBs. And so if you guys would be interested in that, let me know. It'd be, I could give you an introduction to that, take about an hour. And then you can form lobbying groups, and it's a team effort. It's so people within the state can lobby your congressional delegation or your state house, state senator. But it's a team effort where there's 3 to 5 people on the team, and you're telling stories, and and it can be used for any legislative purpose. And you guys have a lot of things on your plate that you're working on, so it might be something you're interested in. And if it is, let me know.
I would be interested in that. I don't know about if everybody else is interested in that, then Tony, I can reach out to you.
Yeah, just anytime, just let me know if you'd be interested in that. Yeah. But it's a non-confrontational way of lobbying Congress or your state house legislators, and it's pretty neat. It's people that get involved in it like it, because there's this intimidation factor before you do it. Oh, they know more than we do. Once you talk to these people, they don't know more than we do.
Right.
Unless the bill you're talking to them about is actually in their committee, chances are they haven't even read it. So you're going to actually go in more prepared than they. And that's just a very comfortable feeling.
Yeah, the more animus you can get out of the whole discussion and your approach to your fellow human beings with a positive attitude, even though
Yeah, I
it's
understand.
terrible at times.
I said, assume goodness despite the evidence to the contrary.
That was a good one.
Yeah, and it's a values-based approach. So you're talking, you can argue about opinions, but you can't argue about values. There's nobody out there talking that they're against justice or truth. I mean, they may have different definitions, but if you're talking about justice and truth, no one's arguing against you. So it's a values-based approach.